I've ridden 230 coasters around North America, which isn't too bad, I would say. It's definitely above average, and I've ridden lots of crazy rides. To me, there's a difference between an extreme ride and a ride that feels like death. And the number one craziest ride I've actually ridden is pretty scary to ride, but we'll get to that later. All 20 of these coasters are not ones that smaller kids would necessarily enjoy unless they're really tough. But let's get into this video. Here are the top 20 craziest, most out of control coasters I've ridden. Number 20 is Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood. This is a top 5 most intense coaster I've ever ridden as far as positive G-forces go. First, you start the ride off with a very strong first drop into a tunnel. You'll get some good, sustained full ejector, 2 ejector airtime dropping into the ground. And from the tunnel on, it's very hard to be able to see. This ride is a gray out from the exit of the tunnel to the brakes. It actually gave me a headache the one time, and I was lightheaded because of it. You go through the inversions with so much speed and force. People like to complain about the length, but considering how intense this coaster is, there's not much complaining coming from me. This is why Tennessee Tornado is one of the best air loopers though. Number 19 is Predator at Six Flags Darien Lake. This coaster is on here mostly for the back row. It's one of the roughest coasters I've ridden, which makes it crazy, yet it doesn't ruin the ride for me, especially after the retrack this year. There is still a very violent moment on that turnaround under the lift hill where you'll get insane jackhammering, but I don't hate that part, to be honest. In the back row, there is ejector on the first drop, and on the first turnaround, I like to call that a death lateral ejector kink. It's absolutely wild. This coaster is massively underrated. It's a blast whenever I ride it in the back, especially since you can get some pretty good room on the ride. It's going to come down throughout the ride because of how crazy it is, but at least for the first drop, lots of room is fantastic to have on Predator. Number 18 is Storm Runner at Hershey Park. This coaster is extremely short. It has only a few elements, however, it starts off with a very good launch that actually gives butterflies for me, and then is the top hat, which provides some good airtime in the back row. The flying snake dive will then come in and give some insane ejector at the crest, and then you'll get some crazy whip coming out of the inversion, and you'll turn into the final brakes, ending the ride. Like I said, it's very short, but the pacing and elements this ride had are action-packed, very aggressive, and while some people like to overrate this ride, I think there's no denying the aggressiveness it has. Number 17 is the Beast at Kings Island. The Beast is so crazy because of how long the ride is and how rough it is, and the roughness adds to the ride for me. Now, a lot of the track is straight track, but at night, that doesn't really matter to me. That's why I make sure to only do this ride at night. And at night, especially in the back row, you can't see what's coming. And that helix at the end is so incredible. Best moment for laterals I've ever felt. You gradually go down the hill and just get slammed to your side. And once again, this is a very long ride. It's the longest wooden coaster in the world. So the helix is really a crazy grand finale to an already wild ride. And again, I'm mostly talking about this from a night ride perspective. Number 16 is Batwing at Six Flags America. This coaster is crazy for a few different reasons. First of all, it's a Vekoma Flying Dutchman, which is really rare. It's only one of 2 still out there. For me, it's a little hard to breathe on the lift hill and brake run, which really adds to it. And then laying in the flying position, it's very intense, more so than the B&M flyers. And that vertical loop is just as wild as the pretzel loops. I did not expect that. It also isn't the smoothest. It has a bite to it, but it doesn't ruin the ride. And I really enjoy this coaster more than I expected. It's so much fun. And Nighthawk isn't on here because, from my experience, it's much more tame and even more uncomfortable. So for me, Batwing is just all around better, including craziness. Number 15 is the Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldameer. I always loved this ride. It was my second coaster I ever rode, and I loved it up until my visit to Waldameer in 2021. It was pretty bad. It was extremely rough, and the elements just weren't as fun. The front was the best this past time, and usually it's been in the back. I think a retracking needs to be done ASAP, but maybe it's just the train. I've always gotten blue train on it, but this year I got red train. Hopefully it runs better this upcoming year, but the reason it's crazy is because it is so rough and has so many ejector moments. It's also pretty fast, going 57 miles an hour. And yes, that's very fast for a coaster this rough. It's crazy. It can give me a headache by the time I reach the brake run. Number 14 is Grizzly at King's Dominion. I want to like this coaster so bad, I really do. The first drop is incredible, in the back row at least, powerful ejector airtime, even more so than Predator, but it's arguably the roughest coaster I've ever ridden. I kind of had a mini panic attack on my second ride on it last year. I hit my lungs and had the wind knocked out of me very slightly. Not too bad, but enough for me to want the ride to be over. And this ride has some good laterals to add to the craziness of the ride. If you just want your body to be put through a blender, then I guess Grizzly at King's Dominion is the ride for you. Number 13 is Twisted Cyclone at Six Flags Over Georgia. I know this is higher than some people would put it, but for me, this is probably the coaster with the most consistently strong airtime I've ridden. Every hill on it gives shockingly powerful ejector airtime. This coaster is so underrated because of it being so short, so not enough people appreciate the insanity of the ride. And that's coming from someone who loves a good duration on a coaster. The very last hill on this ride is insanely powerful. I had to brace myself half the time because I felt like it was going to break my thighs. This coaster also has my favorite collection of inversions on an RMC, and that wave turn is awesome. Getting that strong and airtime going sideways is unbelievable. So yeah, don't sleep on this underrated RMC. Number 12 is the Batman the Ride clones, not including Batman at Great Adventure. I'm talking about the most intense Batman clones. Those include Goliath at Six Flags Fiesta Texas and Batman at Six Flags Over Georgia. Those two rides I do not like at all. Y'all should know by now my feet and legs can't tolerate the pain and numbness these coasters give me. They're just way too intense for me to enjoy. If you can tolerate that, then great. If you enjoy that, then I guess I'm jealous, because they are not my idea of fun. They are arguably the most intense B&M inverts out there, and for me, there's only one other B&M invert I'd say is more crazy. I'll get to that soon. Number 11 is Incredible Hulk at Universal Islands of Adventure. This coaster has to be a top 5 most intense coaster I've ridden for positives. You start with the launch out of the tunnel, which is very fun. Then you go into an inversion, which gives some weird lateral floater airtime. It's super fun and weird. But after that, at least for me, I can't open my eyes after that until the mid-course. The next bunch of inversions are almost guaranteed to make you gray out and hard. Yet, they're still fun to me. They don't make me feel the need to pass out, yet they're violently intense. The mist effect also adds to the ride for me. It's a nice touch. And the pacing this ride has is unbelievable. This coaster was much better on my recent visit than it was last year, and it's super crazy. Definitely the most crazy B&M sit-down in Florida. Going back to the B&M inverts with number 10, Alpengeist at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is the craziest B&M invert I've ever ridden, and there's a very good chance it's the craziest in the world. It's the tallest in the world at 195 feet, and as a thuzy, it does indeed bother me that it's not 5 feet taller to make it a hyper. It's also the second fastest B&M invert, which is very impressive though. You can really feel that on the first drop. You pick up so much speed, and it's so aggressive and intense, and there's lots of foot numbing. However, I really don't mind that on this ride. On the Cobra Roll and mid-course transition, it can be a little much, but for the most part, it doesn't ruin the ride for me. And those two elements, the Cobra Roll and transition into the mid-course brake run, are really what makes this coaster so crazy. The Cobra Roll is very whippy, it's insane. And the transition into the mid-course is so unique, it's so weirdly aggressive. It's hard to explain, but yeah, it's absolutely wild. Alpe is an absolute powerhouse of a B&M invert, and I'm not sure why so many people prefer Montu to it. Number 9 is Mindblower at Fun Spot America Kissimmee. This is an extreme coaster 100% through and through. This is one of the roughest coasters I've ever ridden. It's even nicknamed Spine Blower, but that wasn't really much of a problem for me. After enough rides, it did eventually give me a headache, but it really took about 4 or 5 rides for that to happen. It's definitely not a re-rideable coaster. That's why it's so crazy. Just being that rough and having such intensity, I honestly couldn't keep my arms up on this ride. It was just too insane. That first drop could possibly be my favorite first drop of all time. Crazy ejector and butterflies. The inversion is pretty rough, but it's fun. And on a wooden coaster, it's a little mesmerizing. So yeah, this coaster is elite in my opinion. I can see if this ain't your thing, but I wasn't sure if it would be my thing, but it absolutely is. I love this ride. It's so insane. Number 8 is Lightning Rod at Dollywood. It's one of the best paced coasters on earth, and there's a reason that the term lightning rod ejector exists. When something has shockingly powerful ejector airtime, then sometimes I'll say, oh, that has a lightning rod ejector. And that's why this coaster is crazy. L-Rod is just packed with so many insanely strong airtime moments. And there's a lot of airtime moments on this ride too. Riding down the side of a mountain is insane. It's leaving me speechless right now. The second Twisted Shout and Quad Down are both some of the craziest elements out there. And not to mention, this ride starts off with the launch uphill, and it's actually very intense, like surprisingly intense. Even though this ride doesn't run like it used to, it's still one of the craziest rides out there. I feel like this coaster has been forgotten ever since the ride got a steel retracking. This coaster is still insane. Don't forget about El Ride. Number 7 is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. This is another one of the best pace coasters I've ridden. Honestly, a top 3 pace coaster I've been on. It goes from element to element so randomly. It doesn't flow together at all. It just has the most random elements that feel like they're trying to surprise you and kill you. Like seriously, if I didn't know this ride's layout, I would have been appalled. Even when I did, I was still appalled. It's my number 1 coaster I've ridden for having the airtime of any other RMC, as good of inversions as any other RMC. It's arguably the most intense RMC. It's incredibly well paced. It has so many whippy transitions, and quite honestly, it feels long enough for me. All of this combined is crazy, and it's why it's the absolute best. You can get lots of room on this ride, so that only adds to the craziness. Iron Gwazi is a different beast, I'm telling you. Number 6 is Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. And I've been asked the question, is Iron Gwazi like a bigger RMC Raptor? And yeah, kind of, but there's really no beating a Raptor like Wonder Woman when it's that compact, that fast. The airtime is incredibly violent. It had me screaming so hard. This ride ruined my voice, and it is probably the best pace coaster I've ever ridden. I'd say it most likely just edges out Iron Gwazi, but again, that's because this ride is smaller and more compact. But on top of that is the restraints. They dug into my collarbone. It was very uncomfortable, but it did add to the messed up craziness part of the ride. If you like a ride to just murder your thighs and collarbone all simultaneously, then Wonder Woman is for sure for you, and I'm assuming that goes for Railblazer and Stunt Pilot as well. Number 5 is the SNS 40 Free Spins. I've ridden 2, Batman at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, and Joker at Six Flags Great Adventure. I am also riding Tumbili this week, which I'm sure I'll say the same for. But these coasters do get lots of hate for being clones. They're very good clones. They're some of the most fun coasters out there, and some of the craziest. It's like a flat ride on a coaster. One where you flip out of control. It depends what free spin you're on, what seat you're on, and what side of the train you're on. But really most of the time it doesn't matter, and you're going to get some insane flips. These create insane hang time moments. I feel like I'm going to die every time on them. I do scream on them because they're so wild, and man, I really wish more people loved these just like I do. Number 4 is Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. 120 miles an hour in under 4 seconds. What else needs to be said, really? The launch is one of the most intense elements ever. Going up 90 degrees vertical, the top hat going up 420 feet, the 400-foot twist down. The straight track to end the ride off is crazy too. Even though it's straight track, you're still going over 100 miles an hour. I hope this ride gets better soon and is able to open in 2023 because I missed this ride. Just like this ride, my explanation for why it's crazy doesn't need to be too long, just short and sweet. Number 3 is King Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. Take everything I said about Top Thrill Dragster, make the ride even faster, slightly longer, make the ride rougher, make the launch section longer, and put a hill there to end the ride instead of a straight track. It's another worldly experience. That's why I do very slightly prefer this ride to Top Thrill Dragster. I'm excited to get back on it this year. I mean, again, not much needs to be said about why this is so crazy. It's the tallest coaster in the world, the second fastest in the world. It's extreme, it's crazy, it's not for the faint of heart. Number 2 is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. The most intense coaster on Earth, and my 200th coaster really needs no introduction. That first turn is the most intense coaster element. You will hardcore gray out, if not black out, every time if you are human. And it doesn't end there. You have so many snaps and a few good airtime moments. That final snap right before the brakes can hurt sometimes too, because it's so violent you can hit the side of the train. I gray out while getting airtime on this ride. It's wild. There's a reason everyone considers this a world-class coaster. This isn't even my type of ride, but it's objectively really good. There's no way another ride like this will be created anytime soon. What a wild coaster. I'm excited to get back on it. And the number 1 craziest roller coaster I've ever ridden is Skyrush at Hershey Park. This is the most extreme coaster I've done. It's the ride I think about whenever someone says the words extreme coaster. This is the coaster I get scared to ride every time. The first drop has a kink in the middle of it that makes the drop feel dangerous. The first turn feels like I'm breaking my back on it. Then the airtime moments give very powerful sustained ejector airtime. Just like on I-305, graying out while getting ejector airtime is something you can feel on Skyrush. And we haven't even mentioned their restraints yet. They aren't that good, they hurt. And everything I've said along with these restraints, it shouldn't be hard to see why it's the most extreme coaster I've ever ridden, the craziest coaster I've ridden, and I do not recommend younger kids or very older people to be riding this, not at all. But that's going to wrap up this video. Do you agree with the coasters I had on here? And what's the craziest coaster you've ridden? Some coasters I haven't ridden that could make it would be the fourth dimensional coasters like X2, Ijaneka, Danaconda, as well as Expedition G-Force, A Ride to Happiness. And the coaster that I did have on here that I just took off was Twisted Timber, so I had to give that a little shout out. But, yeah, that's my list. Hope you enjoy the video. Do me a favor and share the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you later.